Hey everybody, welcome to our next episode of Two Dads, One Car. I'm so excited to have our very next guest with me. His name's Alex Chang. He's someone I got to know in the last few years because we're both part of this board where we advocate for equity, justice, and opportunity for Asian Canadian legal professionals and the broader community. Yes, he's also a lawyer as well. I know, two very exciting dads in the car. But we're going to jump into some really interesting topics, I think, on raising a interracial baby and trying to understand a little bit more about culture and that aspect of it. So stay tuned. He's just around the corner, and we're going to go pick him up right now. You got it.
Yeah, I got it.
You figured it out.
This time, yeah.
You figured it out.
Yeah. Well, broken clock works at least twice a day.
Well, welcome to the video series podcast. I'm so grateful that you decided to say, I'll do it.
Yeah, no worries, Stephen.
Sure. Maybe just for the audience, because we've known each other for a few years and I've given a brief intro, but maybe you could tell the audience about, who you are and the number of kids you have and maybe your fatherhood history to this point.
Fatherhood history. It's a short history. So I'm Alex Chang. I'm a strata construction and tenancy lawyer here in Vancouver. Stephen's just picking me up from my home in Yaletown, where I live in a strata. And my fatherhood history. My son was 6 weeks as of last Thursday, 7 weeks this Thursday. My son James Chang. And that's basically the last 7 weeks are the sum total of my fatherhood history, unless you want to count like prenatal prep and that sort of thing. So it's a short history.
No, this is great. I mean, the point of the show is to capture dads on different stages of the journey, whether it's a brand new dad like yourself and myself to be, those who've been around for a while, and those who are dads to be. So It's been it's great to hear that and that perspective.
How's your dad to be?
It's
journey going.
It's starting now.
Okay. Most people do like buy a book or do a prenatal class. You've decided to pick up all your friends and cars and talk to them.
That's exactly it. This is very self-interested.
Very.
Well, I mean, part of very Stephen-esque, maybe.
Yeah, it is. It's a very Stephen way of going about it, I gotta say.
Well, I think part of
very
it
specific to you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm thinking about back in the history, right? Before the internet, before books, we would learn from friends and from family and from the community. My dad's in Toronto, so he gave a whole dump of knowledge when I was there in June, but it's a lot.
Right.
And he was very philosophical. I'm like,
oh yeah,
that's great, Dad, but tell me the ins and outs.
Oh yeah. What was the best gem of wisdom that he gave you?
Oh, the best. So my dad he loves reading books and he's very much into Buddhist philosophy. So he talks about yin and yang and planting the seed and growing the tree, very esoteric, bigger picture things that I'm like, that's great, Dad. But I mean, it's great to know that, but I think there's probably a little bit more to that aspect of it. I'm excited to have you on the show because you're the first lawyer on the show, and I guess two lawyer dads are probably the most exciting dads out there, or the most boring. I'm
gonna go with the latter.
I mean, I guess for you,
Have you ever wondered what it's like for a non-lawyer to listen to two lawyers talk? My God.
I know. I think we lost the audience already with the word strata and governance and over the head.
Exactly.
I guess the one thing I want to touch upon in the very beginning is that I know you just came off parental leave. What's this second week transition been? I know before we spoke, you're like, oh man, it's going to be a transition.
Yeah, it's been hard. I mean, it's hard because, luckily I'm still working from home mostly. But the hours don't go, that I need to work don't go away. So that's less time spending with him. And it's hard to go from, we're looking after someone and 24/7 to, all of a sudden your day is much more split. Not to mention the mountain of work that I had to come back to after 4 weeks off. 4 weeks off was the longest time off from work that I've ever taken since being called. So I the longest vacation before then was 3 weeks from my honeymoon and not that my wife should take that personally. And and I probably checked my work email a little bit more often than I did during my parental leave.
Absolutely, and I think it really dives into those who are really like high stress professions. Like many, like there's those who are consultants and business who run their own business and law as well, trying to like figure out this so quote unquote balance. You seem to be alive and well. You're going on runs and you have a.
I try.
You're awake.
I'm awake. Yeah. Well,
we'll get some coffee.
This is I mean, this is something you'll learn, Stephen, is that you're awake a lot when you're a newborn. Every few hours, in fact, you're awake. There's hours of the day that you're going to become intimately familiar with that you weren't previously.
Oh, good times. We'll do another recording a month from now and see how I'm standing up.
Yeah, I know. I sort of wonder if there's going to be a lull in episodes for a period of time after your kid arrives.
That's why I've been trying to cram them all in just before the kid arrives. That's season 1.
Fair enough.
We spoke about, I think when we last met at my barbecue a couple weeks back, about advocating for parental leave. And I know in some professions, whether it's banking or legal, it's a little more conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping the culture is shifting. And I see it shifting, at least on the tech side, in the last 2 years, where it's much more acceptable to take parental leave. What was that journey like for you, and how did you do it?
Well, I guess I was pretty lucky because, through VACL, I knew quite a few people that had taken parental leave, and they had informed me over the years through some of the events that we had put on, and I had a hand in organizing, what standard leaves were at the big firms, how there is basically no standard leave for like the smaller and mid-sized firms. Luckily, where I work at a mid-sized firm. We're about 14 lawyers. There's 4 partners. They're all dads who didn't really take parental leave, any parental leave to speak of, but I think are sympathetic to those that want to. And they've been kind of developing those policies over the last couple of maternity and parental leave requests. And they're sort of mindful about like associate retention. So, I mean, I was lucky. I got exactly what I wanted in terms of parental leave. I wanted 4 weeks at either end, and I said I said how many of those days are going to be for leave, and how many of them I'm just going to use my vacation time for it. And they were very generous about it. So I got nothing bad to say about it. But what I've kind of learned is that if you're asking about the legal profession generally, it's it's really a mixed bag. I mean, there's no requirement to they generally won't they'll follow the Employment Standard Act of whatever province they're in. They generally won't fire you for wanting to take parental leave. Your job will be there. You'll get your EI, but some places they won't give you any benefits at all. So you might be going from making a very healthy lawyer salary to making whatever EI tops out at, which is not that great by comparison. But my sense is that it's getting more and more generous every few years, right? Because people are pushing for it. And hopefully more people will be pushing like the smaller and mid-sized players to also be a bit more generous, because for them it's really like shop to shop. You don't know what they're going to do.
I fully appreciate it's only been 6 weeks, but has there been something that's kind of surprised you so far?
I mean, I don't think so. I think that
what is that called? What would you like?
Americano.
2 Americanos, please. 2 tall.
2 tall Americanos. Any cream or sugar cocoa?
None for me.
No.
Okay, no, black, please. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I always say black like my lawyer's heart.
I had black coffee with my cousin, and he's like, "Man, you're a true lawyer having black coffee."
Oh, yeah.
He's just poking fun at us.
Cute.
683.
Yeah, and Lisa?
Gin has taught me a whole new level of tired in my life.
By the way, I love the name Jin.
Well, we wanted, yeah. I mean, we had a few goals with naming him, right?
Yeah.
One was, we wanted, we decided kind of early on. We had a couple of European and Anglo names like that we thought of, but we kind of were gravitating towards giving him a Japanese name as a nod to Carly's family. But we had a few goals. One was that we wanted it to have Japanese names often have meaning, so we wanted to give it a meaning that we liked, and we wanted him to be kind of a sensitive, sympathetic person. So we wanted a name that sort of conveyed that. And we also wanted to give him a name that was maybe like not too many syllables, phonetically spelled, phonetically pronounced, so that he's not going through the burden of constantly having to correct teachers, employers, whoever he meets every single day. No, it's actually pronounced like this, right? Because that can be, just annoying, and who wants to put that annoyance on someone for the rest of their lives?
I mean, you and Carly are very culturally and very aware parents. I mean, maybe you could speak to the audience about your background, also her background, and also how has your background influenced your being a father?
Carly and I were both from Toronto. We both were born and grew up in Toronto. Carly's we're both mixed race. Carly's half Eastern European, half Japanese. But she was raised primarily by her mother, single mother, from the Japanese side. Her family's been here for about four generations. I think her grandmother was born in BC, but left. The family went to Ontario after all the Japanese in BC were interned, because a lot of them were after the war, they weren't allowed to return to the coast for several years, which is something that a lot of people forget.
Yeah.
And so they ended up in Toronto. And on my side, my dad is Chinese. He immigrated here from Hong Kong via Australia. My mom her family has been in Canada, I think the longest back is maybe 6 generations. So she's English, Scottish, Irish. So that's her side. So yeah, we both kind of grew up mixed race in Toronto, half Asian, half European. So Jin's a smorgasbord.
Yeah, I was gonna definitely maybe smorgasbord. What are your thoughts on whether that will influence his upbringing or the way you're gonna raise him?
I think my parents once told me that they were worried that me and my sister would be discriminated against by both Chinese people and white people, right? And it's not like there was I guess a little bit of that growing up, but Toronto's a pretty multicultural place, so it's never. I can't say that it was the worst, right? I think when you're mixed, you have your experience is your experience. I can't really speak to how my experience is going to be different from someone that is also born in Canada and fully ethnically Chinese. But you do, I guess, feel like you're somewhat a part of that culture, but you're also something that's somewhat apart from it as well. Like when I was a kid, if you grow, because there was a lot of Chinese immigrants, for example, in my high school, right? So some of them would make a point of kind of saying, well, I think you're Chinese, but you're kind of not exactly Chinese, right?
Yeah.
And there'd be sort of a similar sentiment amongst a lot of the white kids as well, right? You're kind of, you're not white, you're not visibly white, first of all, and I guess you have this other, this otherness about you at the same time. So it's so I imagine there will be a little, maybe there will be a little bit of that, but I don't know. and it seems like kids these days are better about that sort of thing too.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, right? I mean, and just for the audience background, both Alex and I are on the Federation of Asian Canadian Lawyers, and we're very much attuned to really advocating for equity, justice, and opportunity for Asian Canadian legal professionals and the broader community. And this past year has really opened up our eyes to the deep extent of systemic racism, discrimination that that's in society beyond within the legal profession, but even beyond. And you gave a really touching speech actually at the AGM in July about how you're hopeful that when Jin grows up, it'll be a different environment. What are your building on that, what are your dreams and aspirations on that sense when it comes to culture down the road for him when he's in our stages in the career?
I mean, hopefully, if he ever does have to interact with the legal system, or if he decides to make the dubious choice of becoming a lawyer himself,
don't do it.
Yeah, right. He'll find he'll find more senior members of the bar that that sort of reflect him a little bit more closely, right? I had a senior lawyer once tell me that I didn't really look like a litigator, and I didn't really know what the hell he meant at the time, right? But and I guess there are fewer litigators that are East Asian or Asian in general, but in BC, but I think that's changing, and hopefully if he does need a litigation lawyer or he becomes one again, both might be dubious situations to be he'll find people that he can relate to on a cultural level.
To build on that, I mean, Alex, you are definitely a trailblazer in the community. Alex he used to chair, but he now is the VP that oversees our mentorship committee, and it's really to guide law students to enter the profession and help break down barriers and kind of provide that kind of mentorship needed as we go through life. And I'm to the extent the audience has not escaped this legal talk already, hope you're still listening in. I'm glad you are. To pivot, if I can, really on the next, the last two topics here. You mentioned there's probably hasn't been any unspoken truths, but has there been what's been the biggest, aside from sleep, what's been the other biggest shift between you and Carly? Let's say.
I don't think that there's been a shift with us yet. I think our relationship is still very good. I mean, I think that I think we've been kind of trying to deliberately paying attention to each other and being conscious of that. I did read a book that said that studies have shown that marital satisfaction on average decrease after you have your first child, or any child really, because essentially all of a sudden there's another human being. You have less time for each other. Bad habits can form also because the dynamic of the relationship can change, and we've been sort of being conscious of just trying to avoid that as well. And so far things are going good, so I really can't complain.
And just to distill what you just said there, Alex, it sounds like it really comes from a place of intention and awareness that, hey, this is something that the research says. Let's be intentional about our interactions with each other. And
yeah, I mean, according to the book is Emily Ulster's crib sheet. It's very data based, which I like. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just a high rate of that, and it's it makes sense. You don't have as much time for your partner anymore, and really, there's only two things that tend to mitigate it. One is that you have a relatively high marital satisfaction before you have the kid, right? So, if you think that the kid's going to save the marriage, apparently, we're all correct that doesn't work. and two, she suggested couples counseling can also help. So, so those are really the only two things, right? And but I think also just being aware and conscientious of your partner, being mindful that I guess that your relationship with your partner is something that needs paying attention to as well.
Alex, those last 5 minutes was the gem of this podcast.
Okay.
I'm just gonna go and buy roses after this.
Huh?
I'm just gonna buy some roses after this.
Yeah, I know.
Here you go, Michelle. I'm so sweet all of a sudden.
You're welcome, Michelle. I'm glad I could be a good influence on Steven here.
I mean, speaking of roses, we'll head over to Small Victory to grab a coffee for Carly. But,
Great.
Very last question.
Now she owes you a thing.
Of course. Very last question, end it off, is if there was something that you would write to yourself right before Jin came into life, what would that be if you were to write a note to yourself? Yeah.
I don't know. You have no idea what you're in for.
You have no idea what you're in for.
Well, I mean,
you love these questions, I know.
Yeah, right. I mean, you don't really advice or what just a note
for yourself.
I mean, I think actually, because I didn't really know what I was gonna be like to hold my son for the first time, and the feeling is not really like any other feeling that I've had in my life. I can't really describe it. People describe it as love and whatnot, but it's not really the same feeling of love that you have for anybody else you've ever met. Right? It's a very different thing, and it's not really something that I could have prepared for. So I think I would just tell myself, you don't really know what you're in for. you have something of a notion, but you don't really.
I love it.
But it'll be good. You'll be fine. I'll be you don't know what you're in for, but you'll be fine.
You don't know what you're in for, but you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. I learned a ton, and I'm sure Michelle, thank you very much, because I'm going to grab a croissant as well for her at Small Victory. But for those who are listening,
that's better than flowers.
Probably better.
Yeah,
I think better than flowers for sure. So for those who are listening, thank you for joining us today. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and YouTube. Keep watching because I love doing this. I'm learning a ton. I hope you are as well. And we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Bye.